Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd. Sorry for the late arrival today. I've been having some connection issues with the internet. One of the fun challenges we get to experience at this time. But I'm here. Things seem to be working, so we will proceed. Today, how's everybody doing today? Hope you're having fun. Hope you're being healthy. Hope you're being happy. Today's Critter Chat is going to come from a slightly different perspective, and that's why the camera looks a little funny and I look a little different, because I want to emphasize the trees and the animals that live up there. Today we're going to be talking about eagles. Now, many of you are probably very familiar with bald eagles. They're the national bird of the United States, and most of my viewers tend to be from the US. So you are probably familiar with the bald eagle, and like me, you've probably grown up thinking it was the biggest, greatest, most powerful bird that ever has been or ever will be, and it represents all the amazing honor and dignity and grateful things that the world has to offer. And I'm here to tell you that's not entirely true. Today we're going to talk a little bit about bald eagles, but also other eagles. First of all, how many species of eagles do you guys think are out there? Because when I found out, I was honestly blown away. I had no idea there were so many. I remember when I was in elementary school, we spent some time learning about ecosystems, and one of the animals we talked about in our science chapter was eagles, and we had a poster and it had 4 different kinds of eagles. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's 4 different kinds of eagles? I only know about 2. And so I thought, like, oh, well, the 2 that live here, and then there must be one kind that lives in the jungle and one kind that lives in Africa, and that must be it. There's a lot more than 2. There's a lot more than 4. So here in the United States, we have 2 kinds of eagles. Bald eagles, which we all revere and hold to high esteem because they are our national bird and a great symbol of power and strength. And the golden eagles, which often get kind of slighted because they're not as famous as their distant cousin. Bald eagles are listed as a fishing eagle, so they typically live in places where there is good water source and good fish around for them to eat. They love to live near a river, a lake, a stream, or along the coast near the ocean. They are quite plentiful in areas where there's a healthy, good fish population, although that has not always been the case. Excuse me. Bald eagles at one point were very endangered. In 1972, they were added to the endangered species list, and they remained there for quite some time. That was because of some things that people were doing that caused a lot of ecosystem problems out there that really affected the eagles. The biggest of those was a pesticide, a poison that we were using to get rid of insects we didn't want, called DDT. And DDT had a very bad effect on lots of animals, but in particular on eagles. See, it's a big bad chemical that causes a lot of problems and kills off those unwanted bugs that we may not want around. But it also then got into the water, and it got into the fish, and bald eagles eat a lot of fish, and so it got into the eagles. And although it didn't kill the eagles outright, what it did do is it made their eggshells very fragile. And so for a long time, there were very few new baby eagles that were successfully being born. And that caused a big problem and caused them to be really endangered. Now, in 1995, they were taken off the endangered species list. Sorry, I have a little tickle in my throat. I have some allergies and the wind and stuff. It's not so good today. But they were taken off the endangered species list in 1995, which was a huge accomplishment. And one of the showcases that the Endangered Species Act and the provisions it required can do a lot of good in helping save the bald eagle. Now, bald eagles are magnificent birds. They weigh about 14 pounds, which for a bird is a pretty good weight. Birds have hollow bones to help them be able to fly, and so they're usually not very heavy animals, with the exception of the big birds that don't fly, like the ostriches and their cousins. Bald eagles can have a 6 to 8 foot wingspan. My arms, when I stretch them out tip to tip, are just over about 6.5 feet. So bald eagles can have wings bigger than I can stretch my arms, which is pretty impressive. And they can live about 30 years, which is pretty good long time for a bird. Now, some of the great things about bald eagles is that they mate for life. They typically will pair up at around 5 or 6 years old, and they will stay with that mate, having babies every season through the rest of their life. They also build huge nests. They actually hold the Guinness Book of World Records record for the largest nest ever built. And I couldn't pull up the specifics on it because I've had some internet issues today, but it was a huge nest. I believe it weighed over a ton, so that is over 2,000 pounds. They typically nest in the same spot. If it's a good spot, they'll come back to it every year, and they bring pretty good sized sticks that they use to build their nest, and they just add more sticks on top of it, and then they'll put in some other softer things down where the eggs are. But they build it taller and taller and taller each year. So a parrot that's lived in the area for a long time and nest in the same tree or cliff for a long time will have a very tall nest. Now, despite all these great things about the bald eagle, they're not the biggest eagle. They're not even the biggest eagle in the US. The golden eagle is bigger. It's usually a couple pounds heavier, typically about the same size wings, but it is a bigger bird for sure. Golden eagles also don't just live in the United States. Bald eagles are limited to the US and Canada and a little bit into Mexico. But golden eagles have a distribution around the planet, around the northern hemisphere. So they also live in Europe and Asia and northern Africa, as well as North America. They tend to do a little bit better in a slightly drier environment. So they kind of hang out more in the US on the western side of the United States, and they're much more common in the western US than they are, say, the eastern US. They also are really good at living on the plains. So through the plains of central North America in both the US and up into Canada, they are quite more prominent than, like, say, the bald eagle that needs to live along bigger rivers and such. So in talking about both these species of the other big thing with golden eagles, they are also typically more mammal hunters. So they typically go after things like rabbits, small deer, small mountain goats or mountain sheep, other small mammals that they may find, and occasionally some bigger ones. Now, both bald eagles and golden eagles, if the opportunity presents, they will eat something bigger, particularly something dead. So if there is a deer that gets hit by a car, they will definitely come down and eat that. If there is an elk in, like, Yellowstone National Park that gets killed and partially eaten by wolves or grizzly bears, the eagles will come along and help clean that up at the end, and they will definitely scavenge. That is why Benjamin Franklin, who was one of the founding fathers of the United States, didn't think they were such noble birds as everyone else did, and voted against them being the national bird. They also will sometimes steal food from other animals, and he didn't think that that was very noble or dignified as well. But in addition to bald eagles and golden eagles, there's a lot of other different kinds of eagles. And they all kind of have some same commonalities between them. One of which, amazing vision. They have really great vision. They have said that if an eagle was sitting on the end of a football field, it would be able to read a headline on a newspaper from the other side of the football field. That's how good their vision is. They can see something as small as a rabbit running across the ground from a 1/4 mile up in the air. So they have really great vision, and that is true with all eagle species. They also have really sharp talons or claws on their feet. That is a typical bird of prey thing that they all have, but eagles have it better than the other birds of prey. They have really sharp talons, and that's very important for how they catch their food. So with the bald eagles, that's swooping into a river and hooking a fish. For the golden eagles, that may be catching something like a rabbit running across the ground. For other eagles, that comes in pretty handy too. We'll talk more about that in a minute. They also have curved beaks, and those beaks are very, very sharp and very, very strong. And that's important when they're eating something a bit bigger, like if they're eating on a dead deer or something that got hit by a car, they'll use those big sharp beaks to help pull open that hide, kind of like the vultures did. If you listen to my vulture chat, vultures can also do that very well. So how many eagles are there? There are 59 different species of eagles out there in the world. And when I learned that, I was blown away. That's way more eagles than I ever imagined. And they kind of come in a variety of colors, and they live in pretty much every type of ecosystem. There are some that specialize just in fishing from the ocean. There are some that live in tropical islands. There are some that live in rainforest. There are some that live in deserts and grasslands and mountains and valleys. And some even live quite close with people. In fact, some eagles have actually been trained by people to hunt for the people. And that's a pretty crazy thing. It's very common with golden eagles actually in parts of Asia. And it's still done today. But that's pretty amazing that there are so many different kinds of eagles. So one of my first opportunities to really experience other eagles was when I went to Africa. And when I went on safari in Kenya, I was able to see 5 different species of eagles in Africa within a 2-week time frame. And that was pretty amazing. I'll be posting some photos of some of the different eagles later today on the Facebook profile. But I saw Marshall eagles, tawny eagles, an African fishing eagle, which looks and acts quite a bit like a bald eagle in the US, but lives in Africa, a battler eagle, which is really colorful, and a long-crested eagle that has a big long feather across the top of its head. So those are all different types of species in Africa, and you wonder, why are there so many different kinds there? There's only 2 in all of North America. In Africa, there's about 10 or 12, but only 5 that I saw in Kenya. But they each kind of specialize in doing something different. For instance, the Marshall eagle is a really good eagle for catching snakes. So it catches a lot of snakes. It will also sometimes, if snakes aren't available or if it's a little cooler weather and snakes aren't out, it will go after small mammals or small birds. Tawny eagles love to hang out near vultures, and they kind of are the cleanup crew along with the vultures, and they will do a really good job at helping clean up and scavenge some of those things. The African fish eagle lives along the rivers and catches fish. Battler eagles tend to live in more drier areas, kind of where there's like a cliff or a high area where they can kind of have a nest and fly down over a long valley. And honestly, I don't know much about long-crested eagles. I'll have to still keep learning more about them. Now, there are different types of eagles that are kind of found in different places around the world. So I already alluded to that a little bit with the African fish eagle and the bald eagle. There are several other eagles that specialize in eating fish. There's actually 10 different fish eagles, and they live in all sorts of areas around the world, specializing in catching fish. One of those is called the Steller sea eagle, and I'll get a photo up of them later today. The Steller sea eagle lives along the coast of eastern Russia, Japan, and Korea. And it is a huge bird. It is actually the biggest eagle, according to some people. Some people argue and say something else is, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the Steller sea eagle can weigh about 20 pounds. It has an enormous beak. Its beak makes all other eagle beaks look small. And Steller sea eagles live right along the coast of the ocean, And so they're really good at catching fish, particularly salmon. And of the eagles I've observed in the wild, most of them have been fish eagles, because I've seen a lot of bald eagles. And then I've seen a couple, I saw the African fish eagle in Africa. Eagles, when they catch fish, is something amazing. To swoop down from a height, and they see a fish in the water, and they'll dive really fast and put their claws out, and as they go through the water, they'll grab the fish, and then they'll continue flying. So they don't land in the lake or the river or the ocean. They keep flying with their catfish in their talons and haul it off to usually a tree or a ledge or a rock to eat it. Now, there was a day that I was in Alaska, and we were salmon fishing right on the edge of the coastline where the ocean meets the land, and the salmon were swimming up a little stream. And in this area, the eagles had gathered because they knew that the salmon were there, and they knew that the salmon were a good, quick, healthy meal. And we stopped fishing for a while and took a moment to count the eagles we could see, and we saw 48 eagles in this one place at one time. And they were all bald eagles, and they were all hanging out, waiting for more fish to come. And when we caught some fish, as we would gut the fish, we'd kind of throw those guts off to the side, and the eagles would come down and grab those too. So they were very opportunistic and smart. If they didn't have to work for the food, they would take the food pretty quick and easy. Now, of the 59 species of eagles that exist in the world, 28 of them are threatened or endangered. So that's about half of the different species. And all those problems are typical problems that humans have caused, that are causing problems for the different animals. So that is a common thread throughout these critter chats, that humans kind of keep screwing things up. 2 of those species of eagles are called critically endangered. That means that there's not very many, and it doesn't look very good for them. And I'm going to talk about both of those for a little bit. One of them is called the Philippine eagle, and it lives in the Philippines. It was previously called the monkey-eating eagle, and they said that it ate exclusively monkeys. But that's not entirely true. It will also eat pigs and lizards and other small animals that it will find, and occasionally other birds. But the Philippine eagle, they estimate that there are only between 200 and 500 adults left in the wild. And there's a lot of problems that are facing the Philippine eagle. The biggest is habitat loss and habitat degradation. So that means that the place where the eagles live is threatened by a bunch of different things, and it's becoming less of an ideal place for the eagles to live. The Philippine eagles typically live in the forest, typically live up on the mountainside. And so that's usually not a place where people are necessarily living, but people in the Philippines are doing things in those areas that are causing some problems. And one of those is logging. So they're cutting down the forest, they're cutting down the trees. And the eagles need the trees because that's where they build their nest. And the eagles need the trees because that's where most of their food lives, is in the trees or under the trees. And so if the forests are gone, the eagles don't have as many places to live, and they don't have places for their food to live. Those become problems. The other big problem with their habitat degradation is mining. So that's a big problem in a lot of what we call developing countries. We need a lot of minerals to do a lot of different things, including things like cell phones, and we'll talk about that in another episode that's more relevant to that. But mining often causes a lot of toxins in the environment, and as we learned with DDT, with the bald eagles, that can create a lot of problems for eagles if it gets into the food chain. There's also pesticide problems. So just like DDT, that's a problem with the Philippine eagle. Now, there are some good things that are going on for the Philippine eagle as well. They recently named it their national bird within the last few years. And so that has brought better awareness to the people of the Philippines. And they now understand that this animal exists, and they respect it a little bit more. And they're all a little more willing to fight to try to save it. There's also some conservation organizations that are trying to do some really good work, but the Philippines unfortunately struggles with some political problems that don't always allow outsiders to come in and help. So there are still some people who are really trying to work on that, and recently some progress has been made on that front. Now, the other critically endangered eagle that I'm going to talk about is called the Madagascar fish eagle. So Madagascar is that big island off the coast of Africa on the southeastern side of Africa. And that's home to a lot of unique animals, and the Madagascar fish eagle is one of those. They estimate that only about 240 Madagascar fish eagles are left. And the problems with the Madagascar fish eagle are similar to the Philippines eagle problem: hunting, logging, pesticides. So again, people kind of ruining the environment and really causing a lot of problems for a lot of animals. Now, I don't want to end on a sad note today, so I'm going to talk about one more eagle species that really amazes and impresses me. And that is an eagle called the harpy eagle. And in a zoo setting, I've never taken care of eagles. I haven't really worked with them much at all. But when I worked at the Los Angeles Zoo, one of the eagle species that they had was the harpy eagle. And so I have been able to see them in a zoo setting quite often, and they are amazing. The harpy eagles come from South America. So they live in the southern part of Mexico, all the way down through the northern part of Argentina. So they live kind of in the jungle, in the rainforest, and they are experts at hunting in the rainforest. So they're a very big eagle. They're one of those that challenges the Steller sea eagle to also be one of the biggest of eagles. Same with the Philippine eagle. They're also very big. Harpy eagles can be close to that 20-pound weight range, but the difference between them and like the Steller sea eagle, their wings are shorter. They have shorter wings because they live in the rainforest, and they need to be able to move through the trees a little better. And so those short wings really can help them out. Now, a thing that really amazes me about a harpy eagle is that it may weigh 15 to 20 pounds, but it may go after food that weighs the same amount. So it will sometimes hunt things like sloths or monkeys that are also in that like 15 to 20 pound weight range. Now, true with most eagles, the females are usually bigger than the males. And with the harpy eagles, that comes in really handy as they're a pair and they're raising their chicks. The male eagle, because he's a little smaller, will go after different food items than the female eagle. And that way, when he hunts, he gets this kind of food. And when she hunts, she gets that kind of food. And that way, the chicks get a variety of different food sources, which will help them to grow a little stronger and healthier, especially if one of them is having trouble finding the right kind of food. Now, with the harpy eagles, the thing that really makes them an exceptional hunter is their talons. So on eagles, I believe it's 3 toes in the front and 1 toe in the back. So they don't have like a pinky. They have 3 in the front, 1 in the back. And with the harpy eagle, that back claw, that back talon, is about 4 inches long. So it's as big as a grizzly bear's claw. So a grizzly bear is huge, right? They weigh like 800 or 900 pounds. But here's this bird that has a claw that is the same size as this big bear. And that great big back talon on a harpy eagle is how it really catches its food. As it's flying, it will reach out and grab with its talons, and it kind of sticks that big sharp back talon right through whatever animal it's hunting. And that makes them extremely successful hunters. So I'll be putting up some photos and hopefully some videos of eagles on the Facebook profile. Oh, and I saw somebody asked if I can also put them up on Instagram. I will try to do that. Instagram has not been very easy to work with on some things lately. So we'll see how it goes. I've had some internet connection issues, so we'll see how it goes. But I will try to put some stuff up. But I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you today about eagles. They are amazing birds. They do really important things in their environments, and they live almost everywhere in the world. And so we need to do a little bit more to help them. So our special shout out today is an organization that does a lot with birds of prey called the Peregrine Fund. They used to kind of focus on birds of prey in the US. They were one of the big reasons why the bald eagle got saved and really fought hard to get DDT banned to help enforce the Endangered Species Act to save the bald eagles. And after they had that success, they decided to take what they knew and how they worked to an international scale. So today they're working to help save both those critical endangered eagle species as well as other birds of prey around the world. They have some really great information, so I'll probably put a link up to their website as well. Now, if you've heard of them before, I also mentioned them in our episode, in our Critter Chat about vultures, because they are also one of the organizations doing a lot of great work with the California condors. But I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared with you today. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and share it with any of your family or friends. And as always, I will upload this full episode later onto the Facebook profile and onto YouTube. Instagram doesn't let me share the full episode, only on live versions and then a summary clip of it. But enjoy, take care of yourselves, be happy, be healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.